Hello and welcome to another episode of K Wellness Diaries, the interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are joined with someone who I absolutely admire and yet another person whose schedule is even busier than my own. So I'm so glad to welcome him today. It's Professor Ki Nam Jin. Hello, Professor. How are you?
Fine, how are you? Thank you
Yeah.
for inviting me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. You're one of the people who I aspire to be like more in my career, and yes, so it's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So why don't we just get straight into it? Lots of people in Korea and across the world know who you are. You're really, really highly involved in the development of wellness tourism, etc. But why don't you introduce yourself and what you do here in Korea to all our viewers?
Okay, thank you. And this is Professor Ki Nam Jin from Yonsei University. Actually, my major is sociology, especially medical sociology. I have studied this medical tourism for last 13 years. When our government first announced the government will develop the medical tourism industry. Actually, it was year 2009. So our government adopted the policy to develop medical tourism industry.
Mm.
Uh, and then since then, our government poured a lot of money to develop this industry. So year 2009, we had only 6,000 foreign patients. However, uh, last year 2019, the number increased even near to 500,000.
Mm.
So we made a remarkable success in developing medical tourism industry. And so I've been deeply involved in making the policy and also actually executing this policy. So I've worked very closely with the government. So I worked with the Ministry of Health and Welfare to develop medical tourism industry. At the time, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism was also involved in this policy making. However, whenever I have a meeting with the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, I kept asking them, why don't you try to develop the wellness tourism industry? At that time, uh, during the first phase of developing this industry, actually Ministry of uh, Health and Welfare, and also the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. These two government ministries were actually competing with each other
Mm.
to pursue the same goal.
Yeah.
So I thought that it is just a waste of time and resources.
Yeah.
So I kept asking them, why don't you try to develop the wellness tourism industry instead of medical tourism industry? You know, the medical tourism and the wellness tourism, and they can make the synergy effect to develop the both side. So but the problem was uh, actually our government actually adopted the policy to develop wellness tourism industry year 2016.
Mm.
So before that time, the government officials didn't have any ideas of what the wellness tourism
Mm.
means. So whenever I have a meeting with the government officials, they didn't have any ideas and they didn't know what this terminology means.
Mm.
So I kept asking them, you need to understand this and you need to develop this industry. So finally, year 2016, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism officially announced that it will develop the wellness tourism industry. So since then, the government Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism tried to develop the wellness tourism industry. However, we have very short history. of developing this wellness tourism industry. So we should do a lot of things to develop this area. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very difficult when you don't understand the kind of the basic fundamental structure of a concept. So wellness
Mm-hmm.
tourism, if you don't know what that means, then you're kind of clueless in terms of how you move forward and how you develop the infrastructure, the contents, everything surrounding that industry. So you've played a big part in introducing these kind of unfamiliar concepts to the local governments and introducing these concepts into events. Like there
Yes.
was a lot of events last year. Obviously, COVID-19 meant that they were hybrid events. However,
Mm-hmm.
they did still take place, and I think we've moved on a lot. I can definitely see some changes in the industry, and you're at the forefront. You're right there, working with the government, working with local governments all over Korea,
Mm-hmm.
with especially medical tourism, but also wellness tourism. So,
Mm-hmm.
what progress have you seen, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
any
Mm-hmm.
trends over the past
Yeah.
few years?
Okay. The Ministry of Agriculture, Sports and Tourism actually made a fund to support the local governments. So they made the $1 million fund every year.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we review the development of the project plans of each local government, we decide, how much will be distributed to each local government.
Mm-hmm.
So I was the committee members to evaluate their project. And so I had the great chance to know how each local governments are currently doing. So last year I had the chance to make a business consultations to several local governments like Busan City and Daegu City. So in this process, I found that the real problem is in the case of government officials, they rotate their positions every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So it is so difficult to find the real expert in the provinces. That's the problems in South Korea. And so even though I give them some ideas, after 2 or 3 years, they are gone and the new guy is coming. So then they don't have any ideas of what the village tourism means. So the first thing we should do, from my perspective, is first we should identify. Of course, they sometimes they understand the meaning. However, they do not. They cannot find the real village tourism services in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is quite urgent for each local government to identify the actually available village tourism services in their provinces.
Mm-hmm.
Then, then they try to make a ecological system of village tourism services. But most of the local governments so far failed to do this, even though government started powering a lot of money to develop village tourism industry since the year 2017. But we have a short history, but we were not so successful. Of course, the KTO, Korea Tourism Organization, they identified 47 village tourism facilities, services, and they kept adding new services every year. But so far, they have identified 47 facilities. Um, but with these exemplary facilities, many other local governments should try to find out some relevant village tourism services or facilities in their local provinces. So that's the urgent assignment agenda for them to pursue right now.
Absolutely. And it's not easy, but it will take some
Mhm.
time. And like you said, as all the government changes, the local governors change. So everyone in their position kind of moves along. So it's very difficult to keep that momentum up when you are having a change in office, 2, 3 years in, the plan seems great. And then you
Yeah,
have to start from
yeah,
zero.
right.
again,
You're right.
effectively. Yeah.
As you know, in the European countries, in the European continent, the spa is
Mm.
the key, the wellness tourism resources.
Hmm.
In the Eastern Asian country, or Southeastern Asian countries, the massage services are quite popular, the wellness tourism resources. However, in South Korea, in our country, actually, we failed to identify our representative wellness tourism services.
Mm.
So I have, suggested that we need to develop skincare services, for
Mm.
example,
Hmm.
because South Korea is quite well known in cosmetic surgery and also cosmetic product.
Yeah.
So we can, make a ecological system of these beauty-related services. So
Yeah.
I have suggested we need to develop the, skincare services as one of our representative wellness tourism services.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we have also some authentic services like temple stay. Temple stay is also quite unique in our country,
Hmm.
so many foreigners really like this one. It's for they can enjoy the healthy food and also they can spend time for meditation. So I think this is quite good, well-stored resources we have.
Mm.
And but I'm also suggesting we need to develop something else.
Mm.
For example, I suggest a new service like a spa, the health spa,
Mm.
mobile treatment. This could be another new wellness tourism resources, quite authentic in South Korea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and it's very true. And I think one of the problems, of course, COVID-19, but one of the other issues is that we don't have, you think South Korea, you think K-pop, you think K-beauty, K-music, K-drama, K-food, but we don't really have an identity for K-wellness and what
Yeah,
that
right.
could look like. And I know you've been really spearheading attempts to create that brand identity of what K-wellness looks like here in South Korea.
You're right. So, for example, in other competing countries, like for example in India, the India is very famous with Ayurveda and yoga, and they could make successfully their own unique brand,
Mm.
well, as a wellness tourism destination. So I had a meeting with our government officials 2 days ago, and so I asked them, this is the time for us to try to develop our destination brand. Yeah,
Mm.
we didn't make the destination brand, uh, but this is the time for us
Mm.
to try to build our destination brand. And this year, because since last year, we have most of the countries are suffering from COVID-19,
Mm.
and I don't expect the tourism industry will get back to the previous level this year. So this year we try to build our infrastructure and also try to make our destination brand.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
we should be ready,
be
prepare.
prepared. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
after COVID-19.
Now, you recently spoke at the Dunpo International Medical Tourism
Yes.
Forum. So, can you give us a brief summary of your presentation over there?
Yeah, actually, I analyzed the how the COVID-19 impacted the medical wellness tourism industry. And also, based on my analysis, I suggested what should be done right now. And for example, in the last year, most of the hospitals or wellness tourism facilities, because the foreigners are not coming, they didn't do anything.
Mm.
But I think it was a very critical moment for us. We should try to stay connected with the foreign potential customers.
Mm.
We failed to do it. In the case of some leading organizations like Mayo Clinics or some other leading healthcare facilities, they try to send a strong message to the foreign guests, like we care for you and
Mm.
we want to help you. They made a very strong persuasive messages to the foreign customers, but in our case, most of the Korean hospitals, I think probably they are quite overwhelmed with the COVID-19. So they didn't have much time to think about how to, send a message to the foreign guest in
Mm.
this crisis. So I think this is very, very important. We should send a strong message there. We never, we try to help you. We want to help you to send this strong message.
Yeah, to keep
So
customer
that's the main
loyalty.
point in my presentation. So,
Mm,
and also we should try to build our destination brand.
mm,
Actually, we have used, in the case of medical tourism, we made the brand 11 years ago. It was like a medical Korea, the
mm,
smart care.
mm,
Smart care was a slogan. However, we have used this slogan for last 11 years. So 2 years ago, I also asked my government that it's time for us to change our slogan and brand.
mm,
So we made the government spend a lot of money to rebuild the brand and
mm,
slogans. So we announced the new slogan last year. It's like Medical Korea, where uh, your uh, your life begin again, or something like that.
mm.
And so I mean, we should shift our focus from the provider to the customers.
Yeah.
In the case of smart care, it's simply from our perspective, we are smart.
Mm,
However, we need to shift our focus to the customers. We should try to, satisfy the customers' needs. We need to, you know, show them we care for you. And
mm.
so we need to shift our focus from the provider perspective to the customer's perspective. So we change it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember because your presentation on that day was all in Korean, so I was trying to keep up as much as possible. But I find it was so relatable when you said, hospitals here, medical professionals, doctors, the institutions, all the services and facilities, they're wonderful. They're really great. But that message isn't a message that we need to send to be able to connect with our consumer. We need to
Mhm,
send the
mhm.
message of you are the most important thing, because
Yeah, right.
consumers will of course do their research in terms of the medical facilities and what we can provide for them, and what their needs are. But in terms of making them feel like they matter,
Hmm.
that's the emotional connection that has to come through. And I
Yeah,
think
right.
just with my own personal experience of being a patient in Korea, a foreign patient, despite the fact I speak Korean and I live here, the culture shock is
Hmm.
very difficult to align
Oh,
with in a short space of time. And if you're coming here for treatment, you might be here for a month, but you might be here for 7 days or 10 days.
hmm.
And you need to be able to have that feeling that you are cared for, because it's a
Yeah,
very
right.
emotional, it's a very emotional and significant change in your life, both
Hmm.
physically and mentally.
Hmm.
And I think we need to be able to have that customer care aspect that
Hmm.
Korea does exceptionally well. But for some
Hmm.
reason, in the medical sense, there's no astounding bedside manner. It's very much
Hmm.
matter of fact. And this is what's happening, and that's you. And we care
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
but we need to focus on the medical side. So, yeah, I really identified with what you were talking about in terms of we are so professional, but at the same time, we need to give more emotion to the
Yeah,
customers.
right. Yes. In order to, globalize our medical wellness tourism industry, I think first of all we should try to develop our cultural sensitivity, cultural competence. Yeah.
Mm,
Otherwise, it might be difficult for us to globalize our medical wellness tourism services,
yeah.
because we do not, as you know, the most over 90% of Koreans, our population is Koreans, and so most of the Koreans have never, not quite, the familiar with the foreign cultures,
Mm,
especially Arabic cultures,
mm,
and we are not quite familiar with also the European cultures. So we should improve our, the cultural sensitivity. Otherwise, even though we are kind, Koreans are kind, try to help. However, it might be interpreted in different ways by the
Mm.
foreigners. And so we
Yeah.
should try to improve our cultural sensitivity. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it takes time. Yeah, right.
It takes time, and of course, the language barrier is also a big thing in terms of
Yeah, right.
how we can communicate with someone, because something said in basic English
Yeah.
by a non-English, well, first
Mm-hmm.
language English user to someone
Mm-hmm.
who is also not a first language, English as their
Mm-hmm.
first language user,
Mm-hmm.
is so many things can be lost in translation, and
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
it's a difficult hurdle to overcome, but I think it's just one more step towards where we're moving
Mm-hmm.
as an industry here in
Yeah,
Korea.
right. So I think we should do, in the case of medical tourism industry, I think our government made the right choice. I mean, our government made the training institute to globalize the human resources in medical field. So they developed over 100 different training courses to globalize the human resources.
Yeah.
So the same thing should be tried in wellness tourism
Mm.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would make a huge difference, just to be able to
Yeah, right.
speak to a native speaker, because
Mm-hmm.
you have all these worries and issues and questions that perhaps can't be translated even through an
Oh, yes.
interpreter sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's likely that with the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, we might soon see travel bubbles appearing. And that was also
Mm-hmm.
something that was discussed in the last conference that I attended with yourself, Professor. So, what is Korea doing in this COVID-19 era to prepare for the reopening of international medical or wellness tourism?
Unfortunately, not quite, the big steps been made. But in the case of big hospitals like Severance Hospital, our university hospital,
Mhm.
actually, our hospital, they kept talking with the government to try to accept foreign patients. In the most of the other competitors, other countries like Malaysia or any other countries, because they are also overwhelmed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and they couldn't, attract foreign patients. In South Korea, most of the Korean hospitals are in the same situation. However, the tertiary hospital, the Severance Hospital, uh, they negotiate with the Ministry of Health and Welfare, and then they made the inbound protocols
Mm.
of accepting foreign patients. So we could make one example of how to, invite foreign patients to get the treatment. However, just a few cases.
Mm.
So we should still try to develop the protocols and the plans of how to guarantee the safe trip
Mm.
for the foreign patients. So I think we'll, try to make it. However, for last 1 year, I'm not quite satisfied with our actions so far.
Mm.
In the most of the hospitals, especially the hospitals like international clinics, and because the foreign patients are not coming, and
Mm.
in some cases, uh, the actually the foreign language translators or medical tourism coordinators, they actually lost their job.
Yeah.
For example, a year ago, over 2,000 Korean hospitals, clinics were registered to treat foreign patients.
Mm.
However, this number dropped to around 1,300. So
Mm.
nearly one third of them gone. In
Yeah.
the medical tourism facilitators, also we had a year ago we had nearly 1,500 medical tourism facilitators. However, over 500 are gone.
Mm.
So it's right now the numbers are around 1,000.
Yeah.
So it is quite difficult for them to make their businesses.
Mm.
So the problem is we are losing our important human resources.
Yeah.
They are quite important asset for the organization. However, this is the business from their perspective. So, the translators and medical tourism facilitator, the coordinators are losing their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another problem we encounter.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's something that's incredibly sad on many levels. There was, of course, the industry impact, but the industry impact is, collectively the numbers that we see, but the personal impact is also just very sad. I was speaking to someone a few days ago who was, before COVID-19, a tour operator and worked a lot, not in the medical or wellness tourism sector, but worked a lot with tour companies providing tours around Korea. And she said that, since COVID-19 hit, there was no money to be made and she lost her
Mm-hmm.
job and now she doesn't have
Yeah,
a job.
right.
She's back living with her parents. It's the impact and the distress that it's caused on a personal level is somewhat, I don't want to say greater, but in a sense, much greater than on the industry level, because there's always going to be governments there to subsidize, to rebuild. But, it's the personal impact that really is,
Yeah, right.
is difficult
So
to
I
watch.
think we also should try to build online platform
Mm.
so that the foreign customers and uh, any human resource like interpreters or the travel guide can directly meet on the online. And I think we should try to build this kind of online platform so that the travel industry they can provide some useful information to the foreign guests. We should keep them
Mm.
have interest on South Korea
Yeah,
as a medical wellness tourism destination. So we should keep trying to inform them and providing them useful informations. Maybe
yeah.
you can try to make videos,
Mm.
interesting videos to be shared on YouTube, and we should making this kind of effort
Yeah.
to stay connected with the customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And also stay connected with the human resources, the assets, the people working in the industry who at the moment are on furlough or just have lost their jobs altogether, but who need to come back into the industry when it starts to open up again. So keeping those people excited and motivated as well, I think, is
Mhm,
something that
mhm.
we should also look at as well.
Yeah, right.
It's difficult. So, I mean, I know you've spoken about this a lot already, but what does South Korea need to do to improve as a wellness tourism destination, not medical, but wellness tourism destination?
Mhm. As I mentioned, the some key persons they understand. They have just a vague understanding of this wellness tourism concept. But in order to make them have more clear understanding, actually we should identify the wellness tourism services or resources, the
Mhm.
actual facilities. So in the case of Seoul metropolitan government, they spend nearly $100,000 to identify 70 wellness tourism facilities in Seoul.
Mhm.
So I asked the Busan city and Daegu city and any other local governments, you should try to do the same thing this year
Mm.
because you have a fund to do something, but the foreigners are not coming, probably would not come this year. So
Mm.
you should try to use this fund for something else. And I think the first thing you should do is to, first of all, identify the wellness tourism facilities
Mm.
in your area. Then, then you should try to develop the standard for evaluating
Mhm.
these facilities. And then you can also, based on this evaluation, you should make a plan of how to help, how to improve their service quality.
Mm.
And so but in order to make a plan to improve the healthcare facilities, you should have a standard.
Mm.
So once you identify certain key categories of wellness tourism services, then the next step is to develop the standard. Once you develop the standard, then based on this standard, you can try to evaluate their performance. Then based on your evaluation, you can select the
Mm.
best facilities. And you can give them a certain symbols or whatever.
Mm.
And then you can support them,
Yeah.
and you can support their marketing activities or whatever. So then, if you do these kind of things, other facilities may try to improve their services and facilities. So
Yeah.
we have to make this kind of long-term plan. Yeah, not just 1 year plan. It would
Yeah.
not be, yes. So
Yeah.
we should develop more long-term perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's an incredibly important thing what you mentioned about having this evaluation criteria, because the risk that we run when something becomes trendy, wellness has almost become a trend word that has lost a
Mhm,
lot of meaning, because people know that wellness is, popular. So they start to use the word wellness and put it on things that are not related to wellness.
mhm,
And
mhm,
it becomes, it kind of just becomes an empty words almost. So
mhm,
having that evaluation criteria is incredibly important. And I think it needs to be, whoever is claiming wellness need to have that evaluation, and they need to have their procedures and their premises, checked and very rigorously checked, because this is
mhm,
something
mhm.
that we're dealing with, that is the well-being of human beings. So
Yeah.
very important step, but way out of my league. So I'll leave it to the professionals to do all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
What's your personal recommendation for international travelers coming to South Korea for wellness contents or for wellness activities?
Well, so also as I mentioned, yeah, and one of our authentic service would be beauty related. Yeah, and also, so as I mentioned, like a skincare or hair spa. Yeah, and also I want to in South Korea, the if we try to develop massage service, it would be just a counterfeit to other Asian countries.
Mm.
So I don't want to recommend, developing massage. However, in South Korea, we have a massage chair.
Mm.
Yeah. And with our advanced technology, some Korean companies, they develop the massage chair, and they consider this is the outcomes of advanced science and
Mm-hmm.
technology. So in in Korea, there are several healing cafes. In healing cafes, actually, they have the massage chairs. So if you go there, you can pay $10, and then you can, get the massage for an hour on this massage chair, and also you can enjoy the coffee. And so this is quite authentic, quite unique in South Korea. So we should try to develop this kind of new wellness services,
Mm.
uh, which have been developed in our country. It is quite compatible with our national image.
Mm.
The South Korea is quite well advanced in, high tech, and so we should, instead of just following the wellness services in other competing countries like Thailand or Vietnam, we should try to develop our unique services. So that would be, one could example would be, this kind of healing cafe. And so
Mm-hmm.
we should try to identify our unique, authentic wellness services. And then once you identify these services, then we should try to develop the brand stories related to these authentic services
Mm.
so that foreigners can have interest on this. So these days, the brand story is very, very important, I think. And
Mm.
so if this brand story is related to our culture or our healing tradition, our folk medicine, then it may have a very strong impact. So we should try to develop our unique stories, and then send this message by attractive channels like YouTube or whatever SNS. Yeah.
Yeah, brand story is incredibly important. I know that you actually featured Dr. Ananti here in Busan in your recent book that you published. Can you briefly tell us the title of your book and what?
Oh, not my book. Actually, I helped the anti-aging clinic. I helped the anti-aging clinic to build their brand. So my work of how to make a clinic brand was actually introduced in a recent book, which was published in US last year. And this is this is not film. A global brand management. In this book, my work on building brand, anti-aging clinic brand was introduced as an example. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And before we go, because we've taken up a lot of your time, which I'm very grateful for, but I'm aware that the time is ticking on. Do you have any further comments that you would like to make? And also, please tell us where we can find you. So if you have any social links that you would like to share, or a website, etc., please let us know what that is.
Actually, I made my Facebook page, Medical Wellness Tourism page, nearly over 10 years ago. But most of the audience are Koreans, because I introduced some, foreign and Korean journal articles or, newspaper articles. But nearly 70% of the articles are written in Korean. So that's the problem. However, because my audience is most of the Koreans. And so anyway, I've managed my Facebook page, and also I made a contract with Dosali in India. Actually, this Dosali company, they built the online training platform. So I opened my medical tourism course on this platform. So you can also see my lecture on medical tourism at Dosali. And that would be all. I can offer my information source.
Perfect. That's wonderful. And do you have anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
To the foreign guests, we are doing our best to identify our unique and the valuable services for the foreign guest. So please wait for the next year. Maybe we should do our best. We will do our best to develop our unique services, which will give you a value over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's been an absolute valuable time to have you with us today. And I look forward to speaking with you again very soon in the near future. Take care,
great.
and we'll see you
soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.